was a good reason for Harry to renew his criticism of the media. On April 16th, 2021, David Engel, the solicitor, told the Mail on Sunday that although his client, Jason Kanoff, would not voluntarily help the newspaper, he would provide a statement if Meghan's case came to trial. Kanoff's latest approach was prompted by Judge Warby's refusal to allow a trial. Kanoff was also taken aback by the Sussexes' inaccuracies in the Oprah Winfrey interview, as well as Meghan's story that Thomas Markle was a liar who she, as a loving daughter, had tried to help. Warby, the Palace Four complained, had protected Meghan's duplicitous behavior, allowing her to traduce the reputations of good people and brilliant professionals, namely the Palace Four. If the four testified at Meghan's trial, the consequences for the Sussexes would be serious. With that in mind, Harry set off for London. Well, he was going to London because his grandfather had died. But he also knows that when he gets there, it's going to be to a very cold reception. Not just because of what he did with the Oprah Winfrey interview, but because a lot of people were really uncomfortable with what had happened with that judge completely protecting Meghan when there had been allegations that she had bullied people. So she isn't coming off from any angle as an honest person, and yet the judge still chose to protect her, even though he'd given the impression that he would fairly look at the case, and even though the case itself was a piece of junk, which he had said it was initially. So Harry can say all he wants about the First Amendment being bonkers and crying and complaining about the media, but so far judges have been protecting him. But there's only so much a judge can do. And then when the evidence starts coming out, and the Palace Force certainly has the evidence, I don't know what Harry and Meghan will do under those circumstances. But Harry was, again, not going because he needed to deal with any court situation. He was going back to London because Prince Philip had died. His funeral was set for the 17th of April. Neither the palace nor the media understood the Sussexes' mindset when Harry arrived in London just before the service. Y'all, what a train wreck of a life Harry is leading. What a horrible, horrible wreck of a life. And how much shame there would be in every scenario. When he's with Meghan, she shames him from where he came from. She acts like it's his family that has abused her so terribly, so he's always having to feel like he's playing catch up for what his family has done to her. He has to constantly live in shame at being white in her circle of people. Being white is like the worst thing in the world. So he has to feel this shame about how he is inherently a colonizer and an oppressor. Then he's got to get on Oprah Winfrey's show, and he's got to try to toe the line between what Meghan wants him to say and the fact that he does have a great deal of respect for his grandmother and knows she never did him any wrong. Yet he's got to go on there and talk ugly about his family. Now he's got the pressure of the court coming out and revealing all the things he's tried to help his wife to hide. Now his grandfather's dead, and he's going to go, and instead of just being able to focus on how sad he is that his grandfather has died and helping his family through their grief and, going and being with people who loved his grandfather and finding safety there, he's alienated the very place he could have found safety. So there's no safety there. He's grieving that his grandfather's died. I mean, I'm assuming he's grieving. I don't know. He didn't care very much for the old man when the man was alive, but assuming he has any human compunction towards grief, I would assume he's a little sad about it. Where can Harry go to find genuine comfort? Not into the arms of Meghan. There's too much unknown there. He has no friends. He has no family. The media is maligning him. The court cases have been won, but very unpredictable where that may lead. There's nothing that is safe. What a train wreck. I would hate to be Harry. The mood in London was somber. Daily, the media extolled Philip's remarkable life and devotion to the country. The Duke had planned a simple funeral at St. George's Chapel in Windsor. The rehearsals displayed faultless military drill. Few would not be touched by the perfection of British ceremonial tradition. The weather was forecast to be perfect. The only uncertainty was the relationship between Harry and his family. How would he cope with his father and brother? And Meghan had refused to come, citing her 7 months pregnancy. But that hadn't stopped her when she wanted to fly to New York for that baby shower. So pregnancy has never gotten in Meghan's way. And it certainly should not have gotten in the way today. I've flown 7 months pregnant. It's not a big thing. In Windsor Castle, the Queen was preparing to face the public on one of the saddest days of her life. Oh, what a tragedy this was. Not only has she lost her husband, but she lost him during COVID. So there wasn't even any visual display of closeness with her family because she had to go sit by herself in black. She's got a black mask on by herself while she watches the funeral. And not only are we looking visually at what we know to be so tragic, the funeral and the death of a spouse to somebody who has been married to him for 70 years. Her whole, more than half her life she spent with this man. Like a whole person's life she has been married to him. And to lose him, obviously, so sad. But we knew what was going on in the background. We knew what was the turmoil and the grief that was churning in her family at a time that was already so hard. And Harry did that to her. So here his poor grandmother is sitting by herself in grief, and there can be nobody around her because of stupid COVID rules. And the pain in her heart isn't just the fact that her dear husband is dead, but Harry is destroying his family and seeming to enjoy doing it. In Windsor Castle, the Queen was preparing to face the public on one of the saddest days of her life. Philip had been her rock for the previous 70 years. To comply with COVID restrictions, she would grieve alone inside the chapel. "Thank goodness Meghan is not coming," the monarch said in a clear voice to her trusted aides. There was no mistaking the Queen's dislike for the disruptive actress. Harry's presence remained a problem. As a private citizen stripped of his military titles, he could not dress in his uniform, which would have been appropriate. To minimize the embarrassment for both Harry and Andrew, who also could not wear his military uniform, the whole family decided to come in morning suits instead. So every male was dressed in a morning suit instead of the military uniforms that they should have been wearing. So Harry and Andrew, once again, are disrupting everything for everybody else because they can't get their together. To avoid any problems with William, the brothers were separated as they walked towards St. George's Chapel by their cousin, Peter Phillips. So it must have been pretty bad between them if they thought, we don't even need to put them together because they won't even be able to hold it together with the pictures being taken, the filming going on. Something could go down. So we have to place a family member between them. That's ugly. During that short procession, many watched whether Harry signaled any regret towards his family. He did keep giving these sideways glances to William, and some people thought that showed his unease. But nobody knew how nervous Harry really should have been. And he should have been shaking in his little boots. None realized that in 4 weeks' time, his Apple TV series about mental health would confirm not only his disloyalty, but his disregard for his family's privacy. Transmission had been delayed until after the funeral, but once again, Harry had shafted the Windsors. Oh, he should have been nervous. So not only has he torn up his family to shreds in front of the entire world with Meghan, now he's like, I didn't get enough of it. I don't feel satiated. I want to keep going. Apple TV, let's make a deal. You pay me a couple of bucks, and I'll just denigrate my family to death. Looking at his family standing at St. George's Chapel, Harry knew that his damnation of them in the Apple TV series would widen the rift. Sitting alone and isolated, the 94-year-old monarch's grief was concealed behind a black mask. Everyone was moved by her dignity. William looked tense, Kate serene, Charles visibly anguished. Only Harry's expression defied accurate reporting. Slapping his order of service against his thighs as he left the chapel, he was clearly impatient. None knew that Harry, the once adored young prince, had betrayed his whole family again. By the way, I think that that's an inaccurate representation that he was impatient to leave and that's why he was slapping his program against his thighs. I think he was trying to parrot nonchalance. I think he was trying to act like, he didn't feel uncomfortable and so he's just sort of acting in a casual way. Maybe he was nervous, and he should have been, and it could have been that. But I also think that he was just monkeying for the camera. After the service, eager for signs of reconciliation, the media seized on Kate's maneuver to engineer a conversation between the brothers. Cameras followed them as they walked up the hill towards the castle. Later reports of the aftermath veered between a 2-hour conversation between Harry, William, and Charles, and a perfunctory exchange before everyone departed. Few realized that Harry had no interest in reconciliation. He wanted to return to California as fast as possible. The three princes spoke briefly before Charles drove to his cottage in the Brecon Beacons in Wales. William was handed the burden of rescuing the monarchy from the damage caused by his brother and his uncle Andrew. Yeah, well, we don't know here what their little conversation was in Frogmore Gardens right after the funeral, but Harry wrote about it extensively in the preface of his book. And you can go back and watch that if you would like to, in that series that I did about Spare. It's the first video I did in that series, and I just remember being like, ooh, this is good. Because Harry says that he tried to get his family to understand how he hadn't betrayed them. They had betrayed him. And he was only setting the record straight. And he really believes it. He tells a lie and then he tries to get them to come right along with him, and they wouldn't do it. And they kept being like, we don't understand this. We don't get this. Like, you keep saying these things. Nothing that we've experienced together would substantiate that. That's what Meghan says happened. But what you and I, what we know that's not what happened. And Harry left in a huff right as soon as he could. And he refused to be with his family. He refused to be with anybody. And now, having read all of Revenge, I can see why he didn't want to engage with everybody after the funeral. And I remember even in that video saying, why was he not wanting to, why was he pulling his dad and his brother away from the family? Why can't he just go in and have, a sandwich or whatever and like be with his cousins and stuff because they were all at the house? Why was he not doing that? And now I see, well, why would he? Everyone's enraged with him. The Oprah interview was just on, and he wouldn't have been a welcome guest in that house. And I just didn't understand the timeline. But I get it now. But I also see that Harry is all the time trying to pull people away and give them his little side of the story. He's always trying to twist people's understanding of what happened. And he couldn't have he couldn't have gotten the whole room on his side. So he's got to get his brother, he's got to get his dad, he's got to get them off by themselves so that he can try to tell them his little sad story. But of course, they didn't get it. So he leaves. He's in a big fat huff. He's outraged. He's like, well, once again, no one understands me. No one tries to understand me. Everyone's the worst. And Palace finally understood very precisely on 14th May that the Sussexes were beyond control. And beyond hope. Nobody is going to reconcile with these people now. And they certainly don't want to. They have made their bed and they're enjoying lying in it. Apple TV released Harry's broadcast. It was called The Me You Can't See. Is there any of you that we don't see? We even got a special Todger edition once your book came out. If only there was a part of you we didn't see. Harry denounced William, whom he had previously praised as the only person he could trust. And later in a podcast called Armchair Expert, he dishonored Charles, whom he had previously thanked for being so kind, for causing a cycle of genetic pain. That doesn't even make sense. What a stupid term. Here Harry is again trying to use the words the grown-ups use. Genetic pain. What are you talking about? Are you talking about a pattern of generational abuse? That's not genetic. Okay? That is behavioral choices. And you are making a behavioral choice to cut people out of your life and give your children the same inheritance that Meghan claims she had. How about that genetic choice, if those are the terms you want to use? As is his wont, all were cast as villains responsible for his cycles of suffering and unresolved anger. I'm outrageously angry all the time. I mean, unbelievably addicted to rage. I love it. But it's not my fault. I can't be any other way. If other people had bothered to care about my feelings, to show me any compunction of kindness and sweetness, and had cared for my feelings when I was just a little boy walking behind my mother's coffin, I wouldn't be like this. They made me addicted to anger. It's not my fault that I love the feeling of the red mist as it comes over my eyes. It's their fault. Comparing his life as a mixture between the Truman Show and being in a zoo, he said of his family, I've seen behind the curtain. I've seen the business model. I know how this operation runs, and I don't want any part of it. Well, you've seen the way the business model runs at Meghan's show. Okay, how about that zoo you're living in? You feel okay with that one? Is that the business model you want to be a part of? Is that the show that you want to be dancing in? Instead of being reconciled with his family, he had monetized his anguish. That's the only way to go about life, according to Meghan. Money, money, money. The trigger for his anger was once again his family's total neglect of Meghan. Well, she was suicidal. She was going to end her life. It shouldn't have to get to that. That was one of the biggest reasons to leave, feeling trapped and feeling controlled through fear, both by the media and by the system itself, which never encouraged talking about this kind of trauma. I was ashamed to go to my family because I know that I'm not going to get from my family what I need. Again, that statement doesn't make sense. You're afraid to go to your family because they won't give you what you need. That's not a cause and effect statement here. Like, you're afraid of them because they aren't giving you what you need. You're just saying things at this point. Those two things one would actually not mean the other. You're afraid to go to your family because they won't give you what you need. No, you would be angry with your family. You'd say, I can't go to my family and it makes me angry because I know they won't give me what I need. It's not fear, it's anger here. But he doesn't even know his own emotions. He's confused. He's bamboozled. He doesn't know what to say. He's just saying a lot of statements. He's heard them all before. He'll just throw them all out. Doesn't matter if they don't tie together. Whatever. What I think it ultimately comes down to is, and this is why this statement doesn't make sense, because he's not being honest about why he didn't go to them. He knew it was a lie. And they wouldn't believe him because they knew it was a lie. They'd seen her be dramatic before. They'd seen her be theatrical before. They'd seen her act out. They'd seen her make claims. They'd seen her do so many things that were not honest, so that if now she comes up with that, they may have said, "Are you sure? Are you positive that that's what's going on?" Right? He didn't bring it up to them because he knew that she had never acted in a way that was trustworthy enough for them to believe her now. She'd cried wolf too many times, to put it succinctly. Ramping up his earlier accusations aired in Oprah Winfrey interview. Harry described how he and Meghan felt bullied into silence. "I thought my family would help, but every single ask, request, warning, whatever it is, just got me met with total silence, total neglect. We spent 4 years trying to make it work. We did everything we possibly could to stay there and carrying on doing the role and doing the job. Meghan was struggling." Even while they negotiated their departure, hunted and helpless, in London, there were forces working against us. Now, who rebuffed Harry's pleas? We don't know. He never identified them. No one's ever come forward. No one's ever said, "Yeah, there were some people who really hated Harry and Meghan. We know exactly who this was." No one's ever said that. All we've ever gotten is that people tried to help Harry and Meghan. Yet he wants to say that they were hunted and helpless in London. The problem with this kind of language is that when there's actually a real problem, no one's ever going to believe you because they're going to be like, "Oh, some more hyperbole. Well, we've heard that." While the palace struggled to understand why Harry would publicly criticize the Queen and his dead grandfather for their upbringing of Charles, these are really difficult times for the Queen. How dare you come out and your grandmother is very elderly, sickness right around the corner if not already upon her, grandfather dead, and he wants to come out and be like, "They were the worst parents ever. The whole family has a real problem being parents, but they in particular were the worst. My dad suffered under their egregious hand. My grandfather may be dead, but I don't mind saying that he was a nightmare of a father, the worst you've ever encountered." But while the palace wondered what was going on with Harry and why he could manage to say all these hateful things, Harry was super enjoying the fact that the whole world's attention was turned to him. Remember that social media that he hates so very much, the one that he thinks should be curbed and that the First Amendment should not apply to? Well, he's enjoying the reports that he's trending at number 1 on social media. Didn't mind social media then. Twitter's never been more welcome in his world. He was credited for removing the stigma of admitting to anxiety and depression. By contrast, palace officials decided that there was no way for them to reason with the man who, quote, shared his anger in order to help others have a, quote, positive impact. Yeah, you can't reason with somebody like that because that's not reasonable. Sharing your anger and then saying, "I'm having a really positive impact, telling everybody how outrageously out of control I am." That person is clearly in the throes of one of his many mental fits.